Good evening and welcome to the next episode, episode 5 of a school called The Universe, where I take you through relationships. And why would I be discussing relationships in a book which is written in order for us to know ourselves? Well, because all of it is relationship. Break the word down, relate I on a ship. So imagine we're all on one ship heading in one direction. That's the nature of the whole dream state. It's a whole lot of characters in our dreaming mind heading in one single direction, and that is to enlighten the mind in order for us to realize what we are. And always remember that what I am talking about is addressing us at mind level, and the Course in Miracles specifically addresses us at mind, or it's talking to one singularity. It's talking to the dreaming Son of God, or the Christ mind, who has temporarily fallen asleep and awoken to itself, but is replaying its dream and hasn't fully forgiven itself for dreaming what never was. So tonight I'm specifically talking special love relationships. What are they? And then the next level up, which is mighty companionship. And then finally, the holy relationship. And I want to bring clarity from a non-dual perspective in terms of what the holy relationship is. And we as course students very often confuse. We think that special love relationships can be turned into holy relationships, and they can't. They become mighty companionships, but I'll get into the detail. And of course, you would have heard differently. And again, I'm not trying to convince you or anything. I'm not trying to change your mind. I'm not selling anything. What I offer is for free. Even the books I sell go to charity, so I don't keep a single dollar from the books. It's just me sharing my understanding with the rest of my fractured selves. Why do I do this? Trust me, I ask this of myself often. I do this because it's natural, and I do this as a way to remember self. And by sharing what I understand, I extend it in my awareness, and it brings me peace by sharing it. And that's why I continue to do it. So let's start right at the beginning. What is a special love relationship, or what we call romantic relationships, or any form of relationship you have with anybody? So you have a special love relationship not only with your partner, spouse, girlfriend, boyfriend, husband, wife, whatever. You have a special love relationship with your parents, with your children, with your siblings, with your colleagues at work, with people you like and dislike. So all relationships are actually a form of special love relationship, and hence it's also called the special love-hate relationship. And even relationships which you think are very romantic and very loving become very hateful very, very quickly, because the dream character has no idea what it is, has bought into a myriads of beliefs of what it could be, and therefore is constantly projecting a myriad of psychosis onto the rest of the world, in which way it projects and avoids and bypasses and does all sorts of psychology terms in order to avoid facing itself and awakening to self. So a special love relationship is nothing short of a nightmare. I must be kind. Be kindly. And it's a nightmare because the whole dream's a nightmare, and therefore all of us relating on a ship heading towards one biblical disaster of a monumental note need to turn the ship around and head back towards where we came from, which is our Father's kingdom. We've never really left, but we're dreaming we're on this voyage to nowhere looking for happiness. And so based on that, let me make a very bold statement. None of us are really searching for God. We're searching to be happy. We want perpetual happiness. We want perpetual peace. We want perpetual happiness. But the minute it has failed and we've tried every possible avenue in the world of dreams to find happiness, eventually we get to the point where we say there must be a better way. And then we start turning inwards once we've exhausted our journey away from God. And the journey away from God is the journey into dreams. And then we turn inwards and we turn towards. And then we start following a myriad of paths, and we start a bunch of modalities. We everything we can get our hands on. And eventually we stumble across a non-dual path, and perhaps we then find A Course in Miracles, or Advaita Vedanta, or the Taoism. But there's so little to give us, even in the Course. You know, how do we work in our relationships? And the reality is, you can't fix relationships. You cannot fix a relationship because it doesn't actually exist. Remember, you're dreaming. So just use the analogy, you're asleep at night in your bed, and there's a whole lot of characters in your dream. None of them have free will. None of them have any choice as to what they do in your dream. You're dreaming them up, and you're thinking up myriads of possible outcomes to your dream at night. And the characters in your dream are just characters that are playing out your dream as if on a screen. And you're the conductor, and you're the producer, and you're the cameraman. You're playing the whole movie. The whole movie is in your mind, and your dream characters have absolutely no say. And so if your dream characters are designed to fight with each other, they can't fix the relationship. Only you can, you that dreams. And how do you fix any relationship? You awaken yourself and realize that all relationships are nightmarish and nonsensical and don't actually exist. That's terrible. It sounds so cruel, but hey, cold fact. And it's about time we wake up to the fact. So why do special love relationships exist? Why do we fall in love and become hopelessly romantic over someone and dote over someone, and they complete us, Jerry Maguire. We can't imagine living without them, and thousands of love songs, I can't live if living is without you, and it's you and me against the world. Where does that come from? Where does it come from? Why do we fall in love? What is it? Why do we fall in love with people that don't love us? Why do the people we do love don't love us, and the ones we don't love, they want us? What is that? What's going on? Surely by now you've seen the pattern. And eventually, if you're lucky, you meet someone who you like, sort of, and likes you too, and possibly takes your breath away for a little while. Um, and you get together and you say the I do's, and you have a romantic wedding and a honeymoon, and it's really, really exciting for 3 weeks, 3 months, 3 years, if you're lucky. And if you're really, really lucky, you can sort of get along for 30 years, sort of, without killing each other. What is that? Why isn't it like the movies and they live happily ever after, and we move to end credits and that's all over? Why? Why is it that relationships are so difficult, so hard, so challenging? And why is it that when people do really fall in love, then one of them dies? You see these amazing couples and they just truly love each other, and man, one's going to go first. What is that? Leaving the other one heartbroken and distraught and never complete again. Why is it we think someone else is going to complete us? And it's all to do with scarcity. Because the minute we fell asleep, no matter what we made manifest, we had to put our attention on it for it to exist. Exist means dream. God doesn't exist. God is. If something exists, it's in dream content. And nothing in dream content, space-time matter, can materialize permanently, not even a solar system, not a sun, not the universe. It has a lifespan. And perhaps we can't calculate it with our human brains, but everything in the universe has a lifespan. Our sun has a lifespan. It may be a couple of billion years, but it's still a lifespan. And if it has a lifespan, that means it came into form, it will distinguish or extinguish and dissolve and disappear into a black hole and to be gone and never be seen again, never to be remembered. So our whole idea of no matter what we pour our attention into, there's a scarcity of energy in our dream because it's not real, and therefore it needs energy. And so that's why we have to eat. That's why we have to eat. Yes, some of the sages in India go for years without eating, but they just turn into skeletons and eventually they die too. So we need energy, and relationships is about an exchange of energy. That's what relationships about. It's about exchanging energy because we're never enough on our own. And even though we say we love God, the love we have for God and the love we know God has for us is not enough. We still yearn for that one and another. So let me share with you a little PowerPoint slide that I've created because I like to explain through drawings, and preferably I could be drawing, but I can't do it on a board right now. So I've done a little PowerPoint to explain a diagram of energy exchange. So, and you will find this information in the school called Universe. These drawings aren't there, but the explanation thereof is there. So what is it that we're exchanging? We're exchanging energy. And so in the special love relationship, it's always about energy exchange. So imagine these two triangles, imagine them as two buckets or two vases in which are filled with energy. And as two people come together, they give each other love. And what is love in this world of dreams? Well, this wonderful book called The 5 Love Languages. That's how we give love in this world of dreams. Physical touch, words of affirmation, acts of service, quality time, gift giving. The 5 love languages. Ways that we demonstrate as body, mind, characters, the way we demonstrate the love of God we are, not realizing we are it. We demonstrate love through activity. And so two people come together and they love the look of each other for a while. You know, he's her prince and she's his princess, and you just stare lovingly in each other's eyes and your heart beats faster. There's a chemical reaction. Trust me, the whole thing is scripted. And that when you look across the room and you spot each other and there's this instant recognition, it's like you've known each other forever. It's because it's scripted. You're designed to meet each other. The whole thing is scripted that way because therein lies the lessons. So in the romantic period, two unconscious people come into each other's lives, and now they're exchanging energy. I give you love, you give me love back. I give you attention, you give me attention back. I give you words of affirmation, you give me acts of service. I give you quality time, you give me gifts. There's an energy exchange, and we feel amazing because we love to give is to receive. And as much as we say, you know, giving is better than receiving because it's the right thing to say, it's the spiritual thing to say. Actually, it's wonderful receiving, isn't it? It's wonderful to receive unless you are uncomfortable receiving, in which case there's a problem. There's a major psychology problem if you don't like receiving. And so at first that relationship is full because there's two full buckets and they're exchanging and they remain full because they're giving each other equally. But we know that doesn't work in this world of dreams. And so what happens after a while, one starts to give and one starts to give and receive, and it's a giving and receiving. But are we actually giving and receiving what we really want? So let's say your love language is acts of service. You'd like to do things for each other. And the other person's love language is gift giving. Yes, you may appreciate the gifts in a while. So he helps around the housework. He mows the lawn. He does the dishes. He feeds the dogs and the cats and the kids. And she just sits and watches TV, but she buys him a new tie once a week, and she likes to go and buy him a shirt and a suit. And after a while, he's going, these gifts are nice, but it would be really nice if you helped feed the kids. So at some stage, these objectified gifts, as fulfilling as they are in the beginning, they're not fulfilling us because we have an expectation. And because we haven't understood the dynamic of the psychology of the fractured projected self and its inherent different needs, although we all have the same 5 love languages, they're rank ordered in each one of us. So you may prefer to give gifts, but you need to receive quality time. Or you like spending time with someone, but you like receiving gifts. And so your give language isn't always your most appreciated receive language. And so in the beginning, it's fine because you're giving and receiving, but is it exactly what you want? And that's when the doubt starts to creep in. And after a while, one starts giving way more than the other in their own opinion. And you'll hear that amongst, you know, the herd tribe. They get together and they go shopping, and then they sit together very close and drink tea and eat cookies, and they go, my husband's an absolute horse's ass. And he doesn't do this, and he doesn't do that, and doesn't do this. And what does she start to do? The feminine, she starts to criticize the masculine. The minute the masculine, your partner, is criticized by you, the question mark is formed instantly. And the more you complain about him and to him, He takes you from princess category to old hag, mother-in-law category. And he starts looking for another princess. That's the play. That's how it works. And the minute he stops noticing you, and you, in his opinion, when you look at him and he doesn't look at you like the princess anymore, and his eyes are looking around the room, he's no longer your hero. He's no longer your prince. If he's not measuring up to your expectation, you start looking for the next prince. Now, generally speaking, and this is just pure one-on-one psychology, the partner who is most in control is going to control the relationship. Why? Because they're less interested and there's more options. So the partner who has the options controls the relationship, and that's psychology one-on-one. Stand on your head, argue until you're blue in the face. We don't speak of these things in public because it's not spoken about, especially as the world's becoming more and more woke. So at one stage in a relationship, it becomes one-sided. One is giving and giving and giving, and one's receiving and receiving and receiving. And there's an interplay. And so when you're being drained, eventually something's going to go wrong. You're going to be completely empty. But the one partner who's so used to receiving love language, the love energy that you give, and you're busting your ass and you're working 3 jobs and you're taking care of the house and the kids, he's out there working. He thinks he's providing for the home. And you think he's just not doing enough. And you haven't communicated and you haven't explained to each other what's going on. And one of them is feeling completely empty and the other one's quite happy with you being what you are. And she has gone off and they're doing their own thing and they come home and the other partner's finished, but they're not speaking up. And so the one partner who is now filled doesn't understand there's a problem. And so the empty partner, how do they then keep giving energy if their energy bucket is completely drained, if they feel completely unloved, completely empty, completely unappreciated? What do? They go find a friend. They go find a friend and they tell their stories of woe and they get pity and they get validation and they get sympathy and they join spiritual communities and they play the victim and they love to tell their stories because there's no secret in the mind. And we tell our stories of suffering. We tell our stories how we've been bullied and how the world is so terrible to us. And the rest of our course community tells us how wonderful we are and Jesus loves you and God still loves you and you'll be okay. And you get this wonderful empathy, which is just pure ego, and sympathy, which is just pure ego. And your little love bucket gets replenished with sympathy and empathy. And you go back to your partner a little bit filled and you start giving them energy again. And after a while, you just become a total energy thief. And you become the friend in need, the needy friend. And your friends are the friends in need because you're always needy. And you're needy because you are constantly spewing forth your negativity. And the minute you resist what is, you persist. It persists. And resistance is a form of death. And if you resist what is, you die to self. Because in your resistance, you're unaware of the awareness of being. You believe you're a body. You believe you're a victim of the world. And your spouse is a bully or aloof or doesn't treat you with compassion and doesn't give you energy and doesn't carry their weight. And this is the energy exchange drama. This is where relationships go horribly wrong. And of course, if you have options, you'll leave. But if you don't, you stay and you become the martyr. And for the last 2,000 years in a masculine dominated role, most cases, the one being empty was the feminine, because he would be out there earning the keep and she would be home feeding the children. And unless they were highly clever and highly manipulative, they were completely bullied and controlled. Of course, over the last 100 years, that has changed radically. And so don't imagine that the one always empty is the feminine. It's not. The roles have changed. And so when you are raised, so this is the energy exchange of a relationship like that. It's always about receiving and giving. And you start off with all the right intentions, but pretty soon it just fizzles out because it's designed to fizzle out. It's designed to jump up and bite you. It's designed to trigger you. The important thing is that you set up these relationships from day dot. And in the next section, I'm going to talk about how we set up these relationships by watching our parents or those people that raise us. We watch that dynamic, and we very quickly in our formative years start setting up these relationship pitfalls. So how do we set up our relationship challenges? Well, we set up all our challenges in our formative years when we projected into form. Now, remember, the dreamer, has projected a thought into form, thought form. That thought form, spirit, then projects into physical form. Does the thought form choose to project into physical form? It appears so, but actually it's the dreaming mind projecting spirit, which projects into form. The whole thing is dreamt up. Remember, dream 1 and dream 2 are still dreamt up by the dreaming Son of God's mind. So we're using that as Son of God's dreaming mind is really just a way of telling a story for something that cannot be explained because it's just energy. There's no physical sun and there's no physical God. It's just pure energy. So anyway, we've now projected into form. And so as a young child, you've come through your parents and you now start the formative years. Now, when your parents conceive you, at that moment of conception, this is a physical fact, and you can look at this up in psychology. Wherever your mother's brain is, wherever your mother's thoughts are, whatever her disposition is at the moment of inception, the minute that spermie gets into the egg and there's now birth, okay, inception, whatever her state of being is the first primary program into the embryo, whatever she is. So if she's thinking of an ex-lover, that's the persona that child's going to take, and which is very often then going to be the jealousy between the father and the son, or the father and the daughter, that happens at a later stage. So this is all happening at a subliminal, subconscious, pre-programmed, scripted level. And then your parents have a certain relationship between each other. And unaware to the little baby in its formative years, it's being exposed to this behavior. Now, if you've got a very nurturing mother, there's going to be a certain attention you get. If you've got a very cold mother, hopefully you've got a nursemaid that's going to take care of you, or the father can step up. And there's an unfolding of a certain programming which you've agreed to, the thought that has now taken form. And so as a child, you're now observing. You're 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, pretty much set by 9, it's established. 7, 8, 9, it's established. Some say as early as 5, but it's established. You now have a persona. Some are born shy. Some are born expressive. Some are loud. Some are quiet. Some are engineering in their thinking. Some are artistic. Some are musical. You've come programmed. And yes, perhaps it seems like you're musical because your parents were. You chose that life for that specific reason. But you're watching a power play between your parents. Now, it's like a seesaw. There's a power play. Now, they've moved into each other. They're fully in love with each other. It's shag, marry, kill. Can't wait to rip your clothes off as you go up the staircase and you hear the romantic music, and then you just see shoes and bras and panties everywhere. And the next morning, it's just hair's in a mess and it's awkward moments. But then they sit at the kitchen table and they look lovingly into each eyes, and we start the whole story. And you watch these movies, and there's always music playing in the background. Okay, so before you know it, there's energy exchange, and he's giving or she's giving, and they're giving and they're giving. The other one's just taking, and there's nothing more to give. And before you know it, there's nothing more to give. And the one that's receiving is now so used to receiving, and all of a sudden you stop giving because you have nothing. And that person goes enraged. And on the opposite end of the spectrums, you've got the bully and you've got the victim. And guess what? Victims attract bullies. Even though they were romantically in love right in the beginning, a victim attracts a bully, and a bully attracts a victim. And the bully relationship is aggression. It's detached aggression. And it's bully, and it's control, and it's manipulate through physicality and fear. And the victim is the victim of the world we see. Now remember, these are all victim roles we play, but we play them with different masks. So a victim plays a bully, but we're all victims. When we speak victim in this specific circumstance, we talk about a person who's a mouse and they're weak and they don't stand up for themselves and they get physically abused and they never think they're worthy. The bully always thinks they're worthy. Now, the bully may have been victim before, but in this specific relationship, the bully's in charge and he's physically in control. And if you don't behave, he's going to bully you, whether it's verbally, emotionally, or physically. And the victim is going to complain and moan, and they're the victim of the world, and they don't feel appreciated, and they don't feel worthy. Victims never feel worthy. And victims are always high empaths. A victim is always high empath, okay? Highly sympathetic, highly emotional, and they become emotional wrecks. They become broken. Now, the bully's been broken before. And I remember everybody's playing a role. So now you're as a child, you're observing this power play. And there's bully and victim. And you're watching your father beat up on your mother, or you're watching your mother beat up on your father. Yes, that happens too. Of course it does. The world's changed. Okay. So it's not men aren't all the bullies and women are the victims. This changes role. And what happens in the same-sex relationship? There's bullies and victims. Not as aggressive a role play, a role of egoic energy exchange, slightly less as aggressive. You've got the interrogator and the aloof. And the interrogator is the person that asks a lot of questions only to find fault. No matter what you've done, they do better. No matter what you've done, it's never good enough to the interrogator. Interrogators interrogate to find fault. We call them narcissistic. Every single role in this world is narcissistic. The very fact that you've incarnated, you're a narcissist. Because you've incarnated, you have to punish yourself in order to realize what you are through the experience of what you're not. It's insanity, but here we are. Subdivided, fractured selves, trying to desperately remember ourselves in order to become whole. So the interrogator is only going to look for fault. And you're always trying to appease an interrogator. And what does an interrogator attract? An aloof. An aloof person regains their energy by acting aloof, by pretending not to care, by not showing up, by becoming detached, by ignoring. And so let me give you an example of this territory play. The interrogator asks a lot of questions. The aloof pretends not to care. The interrogator finds a lot of fault. The aloof starts to break down. The interrogator asks lots of questions. The aloof breaks down. How does the aloof get energy back? The aloof becomes aloof, runs away, moves out of it, says, I've had enough. What does the interrogator do? I'm sorry, please forgive me. I'll never do this again. I'll never find fault with you again. You're so amazing. And they'll give you wonderful compliments and reel you back in. Same thing with a bully. He's now beaten you up. You ended up in a hospital with a blue eye and a broken nose and a broken arm because he's bullied you, or he's constantly making you feel like shit. And they are, you're never good enough. They're threatening. They're always threatening to leave you, threatening to hurt you, threatening to take something away from you. What does the victim do? They just fall apart until they cannot go anymore. But what does the victim do? They go find sympathetic ears. They go find the social workers, the friends that bolster them and tell them how amazing they are and that they can. And they go and read self-help books and they learn. And the minute they're confronted with that bully again, they fall apart. The only way you get rid of the bully is you end the drama. You walk away until that bully is fully healed. But anyway, as a child, you're watching this. Mother or father, either interrogator or aloof, bully or victim. Let's say your father was the bully and your mother was the victim. You're watching this power play. Who's the person in your life that most drove you crazy? Now, most people say the bully, the father, because he bullied my mother. Some people's anger is with their mother for being the victim, or their father for being the victim and the mother for being the bully. So very often, the biggest challenge you had in your life is your mother didn't stand up for herself. So what do you think you're going to do when you then move into a relationship? If you hadn't forgiven your mother for being the victim, what is it that you're going to do when you move into a relationship? You're going to move into a relationship and you're going to become the victim so that you can understand what your mother went through. And when you're in that victim situation, when you're so broken, you can then understand, hang a second, that's why my mother couldn't walk away in her relationship with my father. Now I can learn to forgive her. Or you can play the opposite role. Because your mother drove you crazy and she was such a victim, you choose to be the bully. And you become the bully in your next relationship. And the reason you become a bully is so that you can understand how your father behaved. And you can learn how to forgive your father, because you realize your father, out of utter frustration and perhaps having been bullied himself, the only way he knew how was to try and control every situation outside him. So he tried to control your mother, who just never stood up for her. And the more you try to help her, the more she shrunk. And the more you try to drive her, the more she shrunk. And after a while, all you can do is attack and bully and control. And then you can understand that's why my mother shrank, and that's why my father was such an abusive bully. The reason you move into these relationships is so that you can understand. And by the way, you go from victim in one relationship, and that relationship ends. And very often you go into the next role. You can go into bully. Or if you're transcending in awareness, you go from victim to interrogator, and then from interrogator to aloof. And then you start a seesaw and balance. But if you're unhealed and the trauma keeps coming up, you can go from bully to aloof, and then from aloof straight back to bully in the next relationship. And if you really have learned nothing and you're completely unobservant, you can go from bully to bully to bully to bully and stay bully. And you can do that over lifetimes. So as a child, you're watching this energy exchange between your parents, interrogator, aloof, bully, and victim. And you're watching lover one and lover two. The victim becomes completely drained, and the empath. And you realize perhaps the way to appease my mother, perhaps the way to help my mother, is I must become the empath. I must become a good listener. I must become a therapist. And before you know it, you're trying to help the victims and the aloofs of the world. And that means that the minute you think you're going to help aloofs and victims, what are you going to become? How can you help aloof and victims? Unless you polarize, which means very often those people that want to go out into the world and heal the victims and heal those people that are aloof and detached, is they become the interrogators. They become the fault finders. And what does an interrogator do? It interrogates and asks lots of questions. They love to become psychologists, psychotherapists, psychopaths, the rapists, because it's their way to control and help the victims, is by control and bring systems. And I can promise you, we're all narcissists. Every single projection in this physical realm of ours is a narcissist. It's the fact that you've fallen asleep and think that this is real, and that the only way that you can make this happy is by acquiring more physicality and bring physical stuff into your life, people, places, things, and events. We're all narcissists to varying degrees. And we're all playing this imago drama. Please look it up, imago. It's a wonderful relationship tool. There's amazing relationship coaches out in the world. Go look it up. IMAGO, imago relationship dynamics. I'm not a imago coach. Just taking this from learning and studying their techniques and applying it to the non-dual. So as a child, you're watching this relationship. And that's why very often you find mothers fall in love with them, sons fall in love with women that are like their mothers. Women fall in love with people that are like their fathers. Why? To learn, why was my father such an interrogator? If I need to understand my father, I become an aloof. And then I attract interrogators into my life, so they find fault with me, and I can understand, hang on a second, that's why my mother couldn't get out of this. This is why my mother was aloof. Now I understand the interrogator. Next relationship, you're the interrogator, and you're attracting aloofs into your life. And then you realize, hang on a second, I'm constantly judging. I'm constantly finding fault. I'm constantly blaming the other person. What's the point of this? It's to bring awareness. Every relationship in this life, every special love relationship is an opportunity to see the dramas, the illusionary dramas of energy exchange that we've set up for ourselves in this world of dream, so that we can realize what we are through the experience of what we're not, because we're neither the bully or the interrogator. We're neither the victim or the aloof. We're none of these roles. We are pure love that has no need to exchange energy, because we are pure extension energy, forever extending the primordial essence awareness of what we are. And that essence awareness that we extend is pure, unconditional light, love. Unconditional. And there is no end to it. It's eternal, and it's continuous, and it's equal to all. But we don't realize that while we think we're bodies. All of this energy exchange happens only because We think we are bodies. We think we fall in love with other bodies. We think that we're mind, body, spirit. We think we have minds. None of us have a mind. None of us have a single thought. And none of us actually have a physical body because there's none of us. We are simply ethereal projections of a mind that first takes thought form, formless spirit, and that spirit then seems to take physical form. But in essence, we are pure one dreaming mind. And the healing isn't happening at the physical level. What's happening is the vessels, the bodies, or the apparent bodies are getting out of the way. In their realization, I'm not this. I am spirit. I am forever free. I'm still as God created me. I'm pure energy. I'm pure light. We then move to a level where we center. We're neither victim nor bully, aloof nor interrogator. We are so grateful for the lessons that our parents brought into our lives, or our caretakers, in the case of those that didn't have parents. And we're so grateful for the abusive relationships, or where we were the abuser. And we've now looked at our faults and looked at ourselves and looked at where we were wrong and realized I can forgive my mother, I can forgive my father, and I'm so grateful that they've brought this into my awareness. I'm so grateful for my upbringing because it's brought me into the awareness of being. And when we center, that's what forgiveness is. We can only abide in silent stillness, where the present moment awareness of our limited lightness of being is all prevalent. In other words, the awareness of God's being in which we abide. None of us have minds. We exist in mind. We have receivers. The brain is a receiver. We exist in mind. And the receiver is going to change its station and listen only to the voice for God, the white noise. In the center, no sound. Center, abide, gratitude. And we ascend our awareness, our conscious awareness, into the awareness of being. We return to I am, the doorway. We stepped out of that doorway. We went, I am, this, that, and a whole lot of shit. We're now dropping the shit. We're moving back into the I am and abide in I am. And even the I am will dissolve, and there'll be I. And even I will dissolve, and there will be the extension. I'm going to pause there and take some questions. So just to cap off on this specific level of understanding, and this is explained in detail in my book, is realize that one of the greatest ways we learn to forgive is we realize the role we've taken on and how it was established in our formative years by watching our parents. And so if you find yourself being aloof in a relationship, you start to understand why you're aloof, and then you're able to forgive self and mother, and you're able to understand why your spouse or your father or your mother was the interrogator. Like I say, it could be either masculine or feminine on both sides of the spectrum. It's not 90% of the cases men are bullies. Absolutely not. There's just a generalization. And the reason I'm still referring to the masculine and the feminine is because special love relationship is always involving a masculine, feminine polarity. They could be same-sex relationships, but they're polarized. One is more masculine than the other, always. And there's this polarity playing out, and polarities attract. And it'll make sense as I take you through the next slide. In this slide, I want you to pay attention. Just imagine the pyramid in the center. Okay, it's pointing towards the top. So these are about polar opposite law of attraction relationships. So let's imagine the masculine as the positive sign, like a magnet, positive magnet, and the feminine, the negative magnet. Okay, these are high polarities at the lower spectrum of conscious or unconsciousness, pure ego mind. The masculine has a tiny little bit of feminine in it, and the feminine's got a tiny little bit of masculine in it. There's a polarity, yin yang in both of us. And these lower consciousness relationships are highly polarized. And just to use an example, it's the very masculine, physical, sports-like bodybuilder, a bear type male, and he's attracted to a very gentle, very feminine, very angel-like, fairy-like feminine. And you see these relationships, the big bodybuilder and the tiny little girlfriend, and it's high highs and low lows, highly polarized relationships. Now, as I've said before, this can also be in same-sex relationships. where one is more masculine, the other one's more feminine. Nevertheless, they're polarized. And the higher the polarity, the higher the attraction. This is serious control. This is serious intensity of relationship, intense control. It's the giving up of self. He surrenders to the other one. It doesn't mean that the masculine is in charge. The feminine could be in charge. It doesn't mean the masculine is the dominant. It's just masculine, feminine, either or can be dominant, but it's about dominating relationships where the one surrenders to the other and the other one takes control. Highly polarized, high highs, low lows, big fights, big making up, passionate love making, and literally wanting to murder each other in the next moment. Highly polarized relationships, highly unconscious. As they start to move up the pyramid of consciousness, see, the masculine takes on a bit of the feminine takes on a bit of the masculine. These are medium polarities. The highs are not that high and the lows aren't that low. There's still highs and lows. These are generally slightly more elevated relationships, slightly more educated relationships, slightly more refined. There's a higher consciousness taking place. Consciousness is taking place. It's evolving. There's a religious play here. There's a awareness of a higher power. There's generally religion is strong in these relationships, both low polarities and medium polarities. There's a strong sense of giving their adoration to a god or a savior or a deity. But nevertheless, the relationships are still polarized. As I said, the highs aren't that high and the lows aren't that low, but they nevertheless still polarized. But we get together and there's a little bit of a transference taking place where he starts to adopt some of her qualities. It's the way you complete me idea comes in, because they're complementing each other, and she's taking on some of his qualities, and she's learning to be more in control of herself and speak up, and he's learning to be gentler and less judgment. But it's still polarized. We're still talking about ego-conscious relationships. Consciousness is rising, but not yet. And then as we get to almost at the top of the pyramid, the masculine has incorporated a lot of the feminine in, and the feminine has incorporated a lot of the masculine in. These are lower polarities. Husband and wife are almost friend-like, almost brother and sister-like. Yes, there's still an attraction, especially in the beginning of the relationship, but very quickly it moves into a friendship, but they're still polarized. These relationships are more psychological. There's a little bit of power play, but it's all to do with psychology and how to manipulate the other person. It's no longer about dominating physically or emotionally. It's a psychological play, still polarized, but they are both ascending in consciousness. The challenge is if a relationship breaks up anywhere along the line here, there's a tendency that masculine looks for a partner that is equal to or lower in consciousness. The feminine always looks for a partner that's equal to and higher in consciousness. Let me repeat that. The masculine looks for a partner that is equal to or lower in consciousness. The feminine looks for a partner that's equal to or higher in consciousness. This explains why the feminine very often falls in love with the guru, because she sees him as a higher state of being. And the feminine's always looking at the alpha in whatever spectrum the feminine's playing in. The feminine's looking for the alpha, someone that can raise her up, whereas the masculine is looking for an equal and someone they can share power with or control. Then at a certain stage of the relationship where the two are completely same polarity almost, there's still might be in male form or female form, or the feminine and the masculine in them has diminished in a same-sex relationship. These two then move into what's called a deeper understanding, where they're looking to each other for understanding. They become each other's guides. They become each other's mighty companion. Now, this is like a railway track. And in the railway track, both wheels aren't necessarily moving at the same time in this case. So the masculine may be slightly more advanced than the feminine, and then she comes past and they start to walk each other home. This is mighty relationships, mighty companionships. This is where you've moved to an advanced level of conscious awareness. You're starting to realize I am the dreamer. All these characters are projection of my dreaming mind. I observe the contents of my dream from two perspectives, from a universal perspective and from a localized as me perspective, as this body, mind, me. I don't physically have a mind. I've got a receiver. I am in mind. I exist in mind. And mind is simply asleep. Thoughts are simply activities of a dreaming mind. There's only one true thought, and that's a thought I share with God. I still don't fully understand it. I haven't grasped it, but I'm now heading in the same way home. We're now moving into a mighty companionship. Now, what's a mighty companionship? It could be your spouse that you married at a younger stage, and together you've had the willingness, because there was a deeper calling, and your faithfulness to God in your development of trust, your faithfulness not only to God, but to one another, the face of Christ, in other words, the face of love in your companion, made you push through, no matter how difficult it was, whether there was infidelity or whether there was unfaithfulness of some sort or a lack of trust or betrayal. You stuck it through and you've forgiven each other. And through your forgiveness, you've managed to get to a certain stage in life and you're still together. And now you've chosen to head home inwards, the inward path. And as you can imagine, this is at the bottom, it's a direction away from God. As you move through the medium highs, you start to turn inwards. And now by the time you get a mighty companionship, you've done a 360 turn and you're now facing inwards. You're looking at the self and you're looking at the self in each other and you represent mirrors of one another. You realize the world is a mirror to you. And now becomes a mighty companion. So who's your mighty companion? It could be your spouse. It could be your friend. It could be your brother. Anyone that is willing to reflect the face of Christ, the mirror of self back at you. Those become your mighty companions. That's why we have communities. That's why we have course groups, course communities, course teachers. And so we move into a mighty companion. Mighty companionship, it's equal relationship. You contribute slightly different things in the world of dreams, but it's all about recognizing our unmet needs and going layer below layer below layer until you realize all of it is original sin. What is original sin? The idea of separation. The idea of sin, fear, guilt, where fear entered into our dreaming mind. And as a consequence of fear, we imagined a vengeful God. We imagined we were victims of the world we saw. We tried to usurp the power of God, but prove to God that we're worthy anyway, and everybody else hurt us. We're not to blame. Everybody else is. So we've projected our own fear outwards and blamed it outside ourselves, not taking ownership to I am. I am that which dreamt, and now I am that which observes the dream, and I'm that forgives my dream, and I am that which sinks back and abides in my Father until I and my Father are one. In this companionship, as we move into mighty, mighty relationships where we're devoted to self and God as one, and each other is self. And so now we're moving into the holy relationship. Now, in the holy relationship, when you look upon this from the vantage point of the observer observing his own dream, realizing you have never left God, and therefore your holy relationship is a relationship with you and your source, you and God. And therefore, all the activities in the dream, when seen through the eyes of the observer, the Holy Spirit, the Spirit which is the memory of God, but since God isn't a memory, God is always present. It's the present moment awareness. So when all relationship in the world of dreams is seen through present moment awareness, there's no more talking victim. My husband did that, my father did that, my brother did that, my sister did this, my uncle did this, my boss did that. It's realizing all of this is mirroring me back at me. All of it is mirroring my unforgiven self back at me. All of it is here to show me I am that which dreams. I am the dreamer. I've dreamt the entire universe, sir. I've dreamt 8 billion people into this world, all fractured parts of myself. The holy relationship is between mind and mind. Our mind and God's mind, which is one indivisible mind, once our mind drops the dream. The minute our dream drops and the self is reabsorbed into its sacred self, its divine self, its Christ self. Its Christ self dissolves straight back into God. In Advaita, it says the Jiva recognizes the Atman dissolves into Brahman. Where is Jiva and Atman once Brahman is all there is? Where is ego and Christ when God is all there is? These are phases used to explain the dream of separation, which never occurred in absolute reality, only occurred in subjective dream reality. And so see how beautiful it is that we've set up these relationship issues from our formative years, where we feel rejected, abandoned, unworthy, never good enough. And why do we feel that way? Because we fell asleep, forgot what we were. When fear entered our dream, we felt we did something wrong, guilty. And as a consequence of guilt came the idea of unworthiness, rejection, never good enough. And that's what plays out in every single special love relationship. But through our mighty companionships, where we walk hand in hand, we walk each other home, we start to recognize the face of Christ in each other. And through the willingness to forgive ourselves for having dreamt this, we start to realize that every drama that's played out is just playing out our unforgiven thought. And if we abide in silent stillness, giving our tithing, our time to God, in total gratitude, and ask to be shown, the attack thoughts stop the more we forgive. Because we started, and how do you forgive? You forgive by recognizing the lesson, by giving it gratitude. The minute you're able to be grateful to your parents and your prior relationships, no matter how difficult they were, and you're not seeing the problem, you're only recognizing that there's a problem because the problem's in your filter, in your awareness, in your consciousness, in your dream consciousness. And so you're not complaining about the husband, the father, the mother, the brother, the sister, the uncle, and they did this and they didn't do that, and they haven't behaved this way, and why have they done this, and why did they do that? No, they haven't done anything. You've done all of this to yourself, and they are just reflecting it back at you, Holy Son of God, because you've forgotten what you are. And because you've forgotten what you are, you needed the hard reminders, the good smacks upside the head, where people seem to cheat, and people seem to abandon you, and people seem to reject you, and people seem to ignore you and not love you and not give you what you want, because you haven't given it to yourself. And there's only one thing you can give to yourself, and that's the recognition of I am. The recognition that the essential nature of what you are is the self-same nature you share with your God, with our source, one indivisible self. And so through understanding how you set these dynamics up in your parents and all your subsequent relationships, because the challenge you had with your parents was the challenge you had in your relationships under different disguises, and the challenges you're still having now in your everyday life. If you look at whatever problems you're having in your everyday life today, it's the same problems you had as a child with your parents, the same lesson played out through different characters in different areas and different circumstances, but it still comes back to one of those 5 things. You forgot what you were. You tried to make yourself into something you're not. You felt guilty. You felt like you did something wrong. Fear came into your mind. You felt unworthy. You felt abandoned. You felt rejected. You felt like you were going to get punished. And therefore, you've projected it outwards, not realizing all of it is you. And the true holy relationship is between Christ and God. And since the essence of you is Christ, since the real you is the Holy Son, the Christ, Son of God, the holy relationship is between you and Father. At the level of mind, not the level of body apparition, but at a level of you dreaming mind. And that's why when it says choose again, there's not actually anything you're choosing. Or the observer of the dream, there's no real observer. It's all you. And you now choose to look upon what you made through the eyes of the Holy Spirit, which is without judgment. Eyes of the Holy Spirit simply means without judgment, realizing all of it is projections of my fractured self. All of it is love appearing as something it's not. It's all love. God is all there is. God is love. And so when I observe from the vantage point of abiding, silent stillness, I observe through the eyes of my Holy Spirit, the Spirit I share with God. I look upon all of it without judgment. I recognize all of it as myself. I extend my loving self into all of it. I not only forgive it, but I am grateful to it. And in my gratitude, it is forgiven and forgotten, and all there is love. And as I extend the love I recognize I and my Father are one. Even the observer subsides, the I dissolves. And as I've said, there is I am, and the minute it went into I am this and I am that, it went into dream state. We return the same way, I am, full stop. God is, and even that we surrender. And it just goes silent. And the extension of what God is, which is our holy self, extends. And even while we're in a dream, appearing to still be in form, in our awareness of being, our shared beingness with God, we then become the light of the world as we spread the good news. And what's the good news? Christ has never left his Father's kingdom. You and I are brothers and sisters. One of us that showed us before 2,000 years ago came to show and demonstrate. And he said, what I can do, you can do greater things than I have done, you shall do. Yeah, we are doing it. Abide. And the dream ends for these thought streams that seem to have taken form. And these thought streams return to right-mindedness. In other words, light, become enlightened by the knowing of self, Christ. And while they appear in this world, they become the messengers of the light, of hope, of a new way to see the world, a new kingdom. The kingdom has come, the light has come. And what else is there to do? You chop wood, fetch water, and be the light of the world. I hope this brings clarity. I hope this brings clarity. That's all this is meant to do. Now, if this is making sense, find the therapist. Recognize it in yourself. Go for counseling. Go find a good counselor. Go find a Course in Miracles counselor. There's lots of them out there. Go find a conscious, aware counselor and start the shadow work, which is the forgiveness work. And if you don't have the money for a counselor and you don't have the time for a counselor, then spiritually bypass the whole damn thing. And how do you spiritually bypass the whole thing? Now, people hate the word spiritual bypassing. I'm telling you to spiritually bypass all of it. Bypass the whole damn thing. And you know how you bypass it? You abide in silent stillness. Gratitude to God. Gratitude for seeing the lessons and realizing how all of the challenges, all of the hurt, pain, and suffering brought you to, there must be another way. How your willingness to see another way brought you into the silent stillness, into the awareness of your infinite lightness of being. And as the awareness of awareness accelerated in your awareness, as you went from unconsciousness to subconsciousness to semi-consciousness to consciousness, and then conscious awareness, bridge consciousness. God has taken the final step, because the dream's already over, awoken you unto himself, where the extension of you extends. Remember, God's not a being, and you're not a character. There's no sun physically, and there's no God physically. It's just all energy. These are words used to explain the unexplainable. It's all light ever extending. And light continues to extend when the light recognizes that the light has come, is the recognition of its own self extending through God. That you need to be knowingly. So bypass all of it. You've done the direct approach where you let it sit and abide, and you just let it sit there, and you sink it all in, and you suck it all in, and you give it permission to be there, and you sense it, and you cry, and then you forgive it. And then you realize it's going to keep coming until your dying day. That broadcast station called ego fear is going to keep talking. And so now you've heard it enough times, and you say, no, thank you. Get behind me, ego. No more. Okay, I've seen it. To whom is it appearing? If it's appearing to me, it's not mine. Who's broadcasting it? It's my fear-based thoughts broadcasting it. I now recognize it's my own forgotten self broadcasting nonsense, noise. I'm going to return to the part of me I cannot forget, my true self, and listen to the white noise, the silent stillness, which is the pure joyous lightness of being broadcast, reminding me of what I am. I and my Father are one. Bypass it completely. Go straight to source. You can't heal yourself. You can't awake yourself. You can't awaken from the dream. That which dreams us awakens. You awaken at the level of dream, of mind, not dream character. And that takes away all responsibility and all the guilt you've ever felt, because nothing's ever happened. You are that which dreams. You're not the activity in the dream. These are just temporal expressions of yourself in order that first you could forget what you are and forget the power of God and think you could usurp it. But once you handed the instruments over to the Holy Spirit, to the memory for God, to the present moment awareness of what you are, present moment awareness of God, which is what you are, brought you back into the memory, the remembrance. You became a member of God's extension once again. Be that knowing.